Hi guys. So today we are going to finish up yesterday's lesson. Yesterday we did lesson 3, part 1, where we listened to Waiting for the Biblioboro read aloud. So today we're going to be focusing on the learning targets of I can determine the gist of Waiting for the Biblioboro, and I can identify the central message, lesson, or moral of Waiting for the Biblioboro. Remember, these are going to be our guiding questions for this lesson. And when it comes to gist, so remember, what is the gist of a text? This is an important question to remember. And then why is it important to understand the gist of a text? So in order to figure out the gist of any text that you read, we have to summarize the text. So in order to do that, we need to think somebody wanted in but so. So somebody is who's the main character. In would be where's the character. That's our setting. What's the setting? Wanted. What did that character want? What did they want? But what was the challenge or the problem? And then so, how was that challenge overcome? Think about what that solution was. For today's lesson, you're going to be using reading for gist and recounting the story, waiting for the Biblioboro organizer. So we're going to be filling this in for waiting for the Biblioboro today. So somebody is the character, in is the setting, wanted, what did they want, their motivation, but is the challenge, and so is that solution. How did they overcome that challenge? So in the top part, you're going to fill this in where it says overcoming challenges in. This is going to be our book name. And the book that we're doing today is Waiting for the Biblioboro. So take a second, pause the video, and fill that in. We also need to put our author in. Our author is Monica Brown. Pause the video again and fill that in. So now let's take a second and let's start talking about the gist. Let's try to figure the gist out of Waiting for the Biblioboro. So let's think back to the story and think about somebody who our main character was in this story. If we look at this page here and we reread it, it says, on a hill behind a tree, there is a home. In the house, there's a bed, and on the bed, there's a little girl named Anna, fast asleep, dreaming about the world outside and beyond the hill. So who is first introduced to us here? Who is the very first person that we hear about in this story on this page? And who do we see throughout the entire story after this? We see Anna. So in our somebody box, we're going to put Anna because she is our main character. She is in the entire story. We continue to hear from Anna, things that she wants, and her thoughts, and anything about Anna. So fill that in your graphic organizer. In. So remember, we need to think about what our setting is. So where did this story take place? Where did this story take place? So let's reread this page again, because on this very first page, it's telling us exactly where our story is taking place, where the majority of this story is going to happen. On a hill behind a tree, there is a house. In the house, there is a bed, and on the bed, there is a little girl named Anna, fast asleep, dreaming about the world outside and beyond the hill. So where does this story mostly take place? Where is the majority of the story happening? It's happening in Colombia, because when you think back to yesterday's lesson, I told you we were going on a trip to Colombia, which is in South America. So it's in Colombia, but then also on a hill behind a tree, there is a house. So in a house, on a hill, behind a tree. That is our setting. That is where this story mostly takes place. So go ahead, pause the video, and fill that in your own graphic organizer. So now let's think about what Anna wanted. What did she want? Let's think back to yesterday. If we think back to yesterday, what was something she really wanted when listening to that story? Anna really, really loved and wanted. She wanted books. She wanted new books to read because she absolutely loved stories. She would tell the stories to her brother, the cuentos. So she's telling these stories to her brother. So she wanted new books because she didn't have new books, right? So take a second again, pause the video, and fill this in your own organizer. So let's think about what the problem was. What challenge did Anna face as she went through this in this story? What was the big problem, that big challenge she had to figure out a way to solve? If we think back, we know she wanted new books to read because she liked stories. But what happened after that? Could she get those books? Think about that question. Could she get those books? No. But why? She couldn't get those books because her teacher, who had all the books, moved far away. She moved away. So Anna no longer had all those books that she loved to read. She couldn't get those anymore. So make sure to pause the video and fill that in your organizer. And finally, let's take a look at our so. How was that challenge overcome? What was that solution? How did she figure out a solution to being able to get books now that her teacher has moved away? So this is where we need to look at the end of our story and think about what happened. If we think back to yesterday's story and thinking about what happened at the end of Biblioboro, we can recall that there was a traveling librarian who came with books on donkeys, and he called himself the Biblioboro. So again, this man came to the village with books on a donkey, a Biblioboro, right? This then made Aunt Anna so happy because she now has new stories, those cuentos, that she likes to share with her brother. So she has more stories for herself. She has stories that she's able to share with her brother. So because her teacher moved away, the solution, the way that challenge was overcome was that somebody this traveling librarian with a donkey, books on his donkey, came and brought more books to all of the children in the village. So go ahead and fill in your so on your graphic organizer and take a second and pause this video to do that. Make sure that you check over your graphic organizer. Make sure that you have all parts filled in because we'll be looking back at this later in our unit. So we figured out our gist, but now we need to think about our moral, our lesson. So in order to do this, we're gonna take a look at these two questions still on our graphic organizer. It's just gonna be on the next page. So these are multiple choice questions, and when we answer multiple choice questions, we have to do a couple things. So first, we need to make sure that we read our questions very carefully. We want to make sure that we know exactly what the question is asking, so we need to look very carefully at our questions. We need to mark out any answers that we know are not correct. So if we know that there's no way that this is right, this could not be the answer, we need to cross that out. So let's look at question 1. The question is, what is one idea the author wants you to take away from this book? Underline the answer you think answers the question. So which answer or answers do you think is definitely not right and why? And I want you to cross that out. That's what we're going to be asking ourselves and what we're doing as we do multiple choice questions. So we have some books contain really good stories, but some books are not as interesting. Writing stories can be fun, especially if you write a story for someone else. And then some people deliver books to those who can't go to school or libraries because books are important for learning and for enjoyment. So which one is definitely not right? Well, I think that answer choice B is definitely not right because I know looking back at my graphic organizer for the gist, that's not what this story was mostly about. That wasn't really a lesson that I learned. That's kind of an opinion, which is something that somebody can think, but somebody else might not think the same thing. So I think that that is wrong. Which one do I think is right? Which one do I think is correct? Well, yeah, some books contain really good stories, but some books aren't as interesting. I think that's true, but somebody else might not think that. So I think that's another opinion. So let me look at C. C says some people deliver books to those who can't go to school or libraries because books are important for learning and for enjoyment. Well, that's what this whole story was about. So I think that the answer is C because that's what this entire book was about. So my answer is C. The answer is C. Some people deliver books to those who can't go to school or libraries because books are important for learning and for enjoyment. Next, let's look at question 2, and we're going to do the same strategies we just did. Which details in the text convey this message, lesson, or moral? Underline all of the correct answers. So let's see, we've got Anna runs up the hill to her house, hugging the books to her chest. She can't wait to share her books with her brother. Each morning, Anna does her chores, and then Anna runs down the hill to the man with the sign and the burros and the books. Other children run to him too, skipping down hills and stomping through the fields. So let's think about which answer or answers aren't correct. Well, since we know that the moral has to do with accessing books, it can't be B, because that has to do with Anna doing her chores. Now, both A and C have to do with books, though. So I think both of those answers are right because those both show the love of books and having access to books. So I have to underline all the answers. That means there can be more than one. So I have 2 right answers here with A and C. So thinking back, make